As we were coming together, Catherine, and preparing for our conversation today, we both realized we've had different questions, however, very similar questions asked of us this week.
Yes, and we actually had a great, quick chuckle and have decided that this is definitely a great topic for today.
Mhm.
So Al, do you want to dive in and share your question?
Sure. I stumbled across this question and it says this. If the next week was to be watched by my children or someone important to me or my mentors, how would I live it?
Yeah.
Mm. So if the next week was to be watched, kind of, like a movie was, and people are sitting back and eating popcorn and watching it, how would I live it? And as soon as I read it, I was like, huh, I wonder. And I started to think, I wonder what's coming up here. So I thought this is a great conversation.
It is a great conversation, and I think let's talk about this. And I'm sure as we unfold it, my question, that I read will come up. But I
Mm,
think when I hear you share that, I chuckle because hubby and I recently, one evening after dinner, we started watching something on Netflix, and we sort of finished one episode and started the next episode, and we were just chuckling that about the fact that we don't have kids at home anymore. So there's nobody to set an example for. And, if we're living life uh, with the sense that there's no accountability or no, like nobody's watching,
mm,
then
mm,
it's interesting how easy it is to perhaps adopt, certain I suppose, habits
mm,
that, yeah, have us heading in a direction that, okay for the
mm.
short term, but in the long term might end up being um, something that is tricky to undo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, our habits are, established day in, day out. And it would be interesting to sort of step back for a moment and to sort of look at our life and go, okay, what am I doing every day? Am I in fact living in a way that's taking me towards the person that I want to be, the
Yeah,
who I desire to be, or who I say that I am? Or, what am I sort of letting slide here and there? In
yeah,
and I just thought if my kids were watching, and I love that you brought up about setting an example because we do when we've got kids, that's what we're doing, right? Our day in, day out is we've got kids watching.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And the other thing that this topic brings up for me is I was reading email from Christine Kane the other day as well, and she
Mm,
was saying that life in many ways can be likened to nature, and if we liken our lives to a tree, and she was talking specifically about the olive tree and how olive trees spend quite a few years establishing their roots
mm,
before eventually bearing olives or bearing fruit. And so often in life, like if no one else is watching, there in every day there are these moments where we're interacting with the outside world and with people, and it's
mm,
almost, in those moments we can turn the dial up on like what is the fruit, and
mm,
what is the outside world seeing, but how much of our lives is actually takes place sort of
mm.
out of sight of people and behind closed doors, and
Yeah.
that's almost like the root system.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I think of when you share that question is how am I tending my root system?
Mm,
Are my roots being watered and fed and nurtured,
mm,
and are old branches being cut off? Like the whole metaphor of looking after a tree.
mm,
And I suppose um, your question just helps me to reflect on, so what does
mm.
all that time that doesn't happen outside in front of others
That everyone sees so
actually look
easily.
like? Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember a few years ago, I had some music on and one of the kids was like, "Oh, mum, you always just listen to, worship music and 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 I do think when you're at home and you're tending to the root system, you need to feed it what you are thinking it needs to be fed. And so I remember thinking that's not the only music that I like. And I remember being a bit defensive because I love music. Um, but I remember sort of thinking it's a privilege, I guess, when you are living at home with people that people do get to see some of the behind the scenes things where you are tending to the deeper parts of our being and where we are feeding and watering ourselves. It's just yeah, it was a funny conversation. It just came back to me right then.
So yeah, and I think the helpful thing about this question is it's one of those questions that helps us to um, clarify again,
Mm,
if we haven't in a while,
yeah.
what's important to us,
Yes.
and what our values are.
Mm,
And I was part of a conversation earlier in the week where a whole lot of us got together and we were kind of sharing how easy it is in life to feel a bit vague or lost as far as
mm,
the direction we want to go in and what we want our lives to stand for. And this
mm,
person was encouraging us that a good place to go back to is to go back to your values and trying to figure out
yeah.
what you value. And when your values are clear, it's easier to sometimes recalibrate to
Mm,
those values. And so I
mm,
think, if I had this notion of, oh, my life for this next week is going to be a movie and people are going to be watching, yeah, well, what is important to me, and how
yeah.
do I want to show up? And absolutely it
Mm,
will be um magnifying, I suppose, what my values are.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah. And it is good. I mean, we've talked about values, I don't know how many times on the podcast, but we can never talk about it enough, really, because life is busy and we get caught up in the day in, day out, and we just, getting to where you need to be and doing what you need to get done to go to bed and get up and do it all again the next day. And it's easy to sometimes forget the direction perhaps that we're going in and forget that it requires being intentional. So for me, that question was, okay, this is interesting. What's coming up? What's uncomfortable? Is there anything uncomfortable?
Yes.
Or what do I need to shift something to think, okay, if this is who I am, what am I going to do to show that? Like it's just an interesting, curious question to go, is there any changes I would like to make? What do I need to do about it? But yeah, I love that it does highlight our purpose. It highlights our values for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And it
And
and
you're,
it and it also, yeah, I say it links really, really well into the question I came across this week. And it tickles me sometimes, when you and I get together and we've had such similar similar
mm,
things. So the question that came across my table was this: if a younger version of you sat down across the table today and
mm,
asked, so what have you done with my life? What would you say?
mm,
And it's a similar question, just asked a bit differently, I think, you
mm,
know. And I sort of think, okay, so if I was, and because I'm visual, this isn't
mm.
so too difficult for me, but if I was to imagine myself sitting across the table from the version of me in my 20s, and she's
Yeah.
asking me, so, so tell me
What have you
what
done?
did you do over the next, what have you done for the last 20 years or the next 20 years, and how's it going to unfold? Um, there is part of me that goes, wow, actually, we've done a lot, like a
Mm,
lot has happened. And there've been wonderful times and not so great times, for sure.
mm,
Um, there've been things that have happened that I wouldn't have possibly dreamed of back then, and or wouldn't have
mm.
thought was even possible, that actually has become possible.
Yeah.
And yet there's also grief and loss. The
Mm.
things that I would have hoped would have turned out in a way,
That
and
just
they
they didn't.
haven't.
Mm.
And yeah, so it's another interesting reflection.
Mm.
What comes up for
I'm
you?
just I'm just picturing it. Like even if I was to think now and I was thinking, okay, myself in 20 years or something and ask that question, what have I done with it? And, you know, I would hope that I could say I I did everything that I put my hands to everything that I possibly could and I tried really, really hard. I
Yeah.
worked hard with what I have. Um, but it's quite confronting too, because we do have one life
Yeah.
and we get one shot at it. We get one shot here on earth and we get to incredible opportunity to share it with loved ones and um we get to go out and work and we get to learn and grow and we get to enjoy nature and all of these wonderful things.
Mm.
Um, and feel like I would it's not fear driven, but I would hate to think that I didn't make the most of opportunities.
Yeah.
Like I would hate for my young person to ask that question of me and say, oh, I just wasted it. I squandered my life.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I totally agreed. And so I think again it's one of those other questions. So these two questions I think are both great questions for sort of cleaning the lens a bit,
Yeah,
and
that's a good way of putting
clarifying.
it. Mm.
Um, and I think how often, even in a week,
Yeah.
do I choose something that perhaps means I'm procrastinating or time wasting and I don't say this for anybody to feel bad about themselves at all, not at all, but
Mm.
it's a reminder to myself that uh yes, there are seasons and times where, I feel like there's been so much that my brain is just so full and I just need a break, and that's
Mm.
different because you're kind of going, we all need that. But it
Yeah.
also helps me to ask the question of, okay, so when I am feeling like that, what would I like to choose to do that's actually going to um,
Mm.
nourish,
And
you know,
strengthen
and
and
strengthen. And
mm.
and I do, I must say that um a couple of times in the last sort of month, I suppose, I've had thoughts of, oh, I just need a bone detox for the day. Like how I've often noticed that when there is a moment in my day where I go, oh, I just need, 20 minutes, sit down, cup of tea,
Mm.
uh, I tend to then pick up my phone and sometimes it's scrolling, sometimes it's email, and then I get so frustrated because I think, oh man, I wanted to use this 20 minutes differently. And I
Mm.
think for me, a much more resourceful thing is probably to put walking shoes on and just take the house keys and leave home without a phone even and just,
Yeah.
which I never do. The phone always comes with me, which is,
Yeah.
it's become such oh, this thing I'm attached
Mm.
to. But just to get out and just do something different. That's going
Yeah.
to be a different way of spending my downtime. Because I think, if I'm honest, that's probably the area where, now
Mm.
that I'm reflecting on these questions, I go, that's maybe
Mm.
something I want to do a bit differently.
Yeah. And that's the thing when we have questions like this come our way, it's not about judging ourselves or beating ourselves up over areas that we could do better. It's about getting curious and go, okay, is there some changes? What could I do? How could it look a little bit different so that you're making the most or you're living in a way that you can be kind of proud of and how you want to live.
Yeah, and it also reminds me this conversation of that metaphor that you've actually shared on the podcast years ago. Uh, I think it was right in the beginning when we first started,
Mm,
but the story of the rocket that takes off, and
okay.
if you set or it was maybe an airplane or something, but anyway,
Mm,
you set the dials to go a certain
like
way, and
one
if you
degree
set them
off or something.
1 degree
Mm,
off,
mm,
and it is if you like live this next day a degree off and how you choose to spend your time.
mm,
But then the day after it's also a degree off, and the day after it's a
mm,
degree off. Yeah, when you do have that conversation with yourself in
mm.
20 years' time,
Yeah.
if you haven't done a check-in and ask yourself, hey, am I heading the direction I want to head in? And is this
Yeah.
how I want to live? It would
Yeah.
be so easy to wake up in 20 years and go, oh my gosh.
I'm nowhere near where I set out to be.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
and the beautiful thing that I do love about that is the realization that it is a dial back then of just the 1 degree to start with, because
yeah,
it builds momentum, it builds direction, and that one little shift makes a massive, massive difference over a period of time. I've been working with someone recently and you know, they're in a space where they're feeling pretty overwhelmed because a lot of areas in their life is all out of whack. It's not where they set out to be. And
yeah,
so it's pretty easy in that space to sort of throw hands and be overwhelmed and go, oh, well, it's too hard. And we've sort of been
yeah,
talking about the power of small step, because with the small step, it does begin to build momentum. And then if we do that, even if we don't shift anything else, one
yeah,
little change makes a big difference over a period of time. Um, so yeah, I think those questions are great to ask ourselves every now and then. I had as part of in my job, I have coaching once, every month and a half or something. I have coaching, and
okay.
um, we were talking about it, and she was asking me about, because I'm about to start some studies, and she goes, "Oh, so what comes up for you around the word of procrastination?" Me and
Mm.
procrastination have been friends over the years, but I love that she asked me those questions, because now when I go into this space and start study yet again, I'm already being intentional and deciding, okay, what direction do I want to go in? Doesn't mean procrastination is not going to come up, because, hey, I'm human and I haven't perfected that.
Uh,
um, but I think it's really important. If we don't ask ourselves these questions, it's not going to come to the forefront of our mind. It can be years down the track before we realize, hey, I'm not where I want to be.
yeah, no, for sure. So,
Mm.
if you're listening, our encouragement for today, however
Mm.
you like to reflect on these things,
Mm.
we'll have both the questions in pop them in the
I'll put
notes,
them in.
and they'll be in the emails I send out for sure. And
Mm.
we'd love to hear from you. When you ask
Yeah.
yourself these questions, what comes
What
up
comes up?
for you? Yeah, and
Mm.
how are they helpful or not helpful? And yeah, we'd love to
Yeah.
hear. We always love to hear. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully that's encouraged some people today to put their glasses of curiosity on and have a bit of a look, and can't wait to hear from you.
thanks, Al.